Yo, 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 welcome to Urban Guitar Legend. Welcome. Thank you and welcome, welcome, welcome. Today I'm going to show you something. I'm going to show you how to connect to your virtual machine by SSHing into it. And in the process, I'm going to show you a little bit about how networking works inside VirtualBox. Okay, so first thing I need to do is start my screen recorder software. Let's see. So first thing we got is we have our virtual machine here. I have one called Red Hat Enterprise Linux Clone 1. And you click on it. We're going to take a look at how the networking is set up for it. So we're going to come to details. And we're going to come down here to this. We're going to click on this network. And you see it already says Intel Pro 1000 MT Desktop NAT. Okay, let's see what that means. What does NAT actually mean? We see we have one adapter that's currently selected and in use. Now, if we click this drop down where it says attached to, we see different types of adapters that we can set up, or different type of networking configurations we can set up. One is NAT, capital N, capital A, capital T. The next one is bridge. The next one is internal network. The next one is hosted only adapter. The next one is host, and that one's deprecated. The next one is host only network, generic driver, NAT network, cloud network, experimental, and then not attached. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 or 8 different options we could choose. So what do they all mean? Well, we're going to start with the first one in this series. We're going to start analyzing what this capital N, capital A, capital T NAT is telling us. What that is basically telling us is that when we launch this virtual machine, the virtual machine can connect to the internet. It's just like your NAT network at your house on your home router. Nobody can get in, but you can get out. You can get out to the internet, but nobody can get in. Your host computer, in this case, my laptop, is acting as my NAT router. Okay, and my virtual machine is behind the NAT, so I can get out to the network with this selected, but I won't be able to connect back to the virtual machine, okay, from my host system, unless I do something called port forwarding. And you see down here, you have port forwarding as an option. So first thing I'm doing is I'm going to click on this and I'm going to delete what's in here already because I had some stuff set up already in there. So I'm going to delete that. So, because normally when you set up a virtual machine, you won't have any port forwarding configured. So let's take a look at what happens when I launch this virtual machine and it's set to NAT, capital N, capital A, capital T, which is the default. You don't have to worry about any of these other settings. You're always going to have this NAT selected as the default type. So let's go ahead and launch this virtual machine. And let's take a look and see what kind of IP address that we have, like I said, by default. And let me make this bigger, scale to 200%. Now, one of the reasons that we want to be able to connect to our virtual machine from our host system is so that we can use our own terminal. Because right now, I'm connected to the console. So this is just like I'm sitting at the physical computer itself. I'm sitting at the console. But we want to be able to SSH in, so we can use our own terminal here from Mac OS. And let me just make this a different color so that we can tell we're using the Mac terminal. Why do we want to use the Mac terminal? Is because you can scroll up, you can scroll down, you can do copy paste. It's just better. You know what I'm saying, to be able to use your Mac terminal. So for right now, we're just going to minimize this and put it aside. I'm going to log in as root. Oops. Capture. Password is password. All right, so I'm logged in. I'm going to type nmcli to see. Oh, no nmcli. Oh, and ncmli. No, it's nmcli. So if you look right here, you see that the inet4 address is 10.0.2.15, okay? and it's subnetted down to 24 bits of subnetting, which means that 10.0.2 is the network address and 15 is the host address. Okay, so because because it's set up as NAT network inside of my virtual machine settings, this particular virtual machine is the only machine on the network. That's what NAT means. It means that it's one of one. This one machine, it can talk to the host system, but the host system cannot talk back to it, or cannot, we can't connect to it through SSH unless we set up port forwarding. If I have other virtual machines that are configured with this same setting, capital N, capital A, capital T, those virtual machines will not be able to connect to this virtual machine. They will not be able to communicate with this virtual machine. Unless you use I think you can use port forwarding and make that work too. I think, I'm not, we have to test that out and see. But for the most part, they're going to have the same IP address as this. They're going to have 10.0.2.15 is going to be the other virtual machine's IP address if it's configured with this same configuration. So anytime you have a virtual machine with capital N, capital A, capital T, it's going to have this IP address, 10.0.2.15. Okay, so it's a one of one. So the use case for this is when you just want to pretty much have this one virtual machine isolated kind of to itself, but it has access to the internet. Okay, anyway, let's take a look at something here. First, let's close this out. And remember, I told you that you can connect to your host system. So for example, my host system on my Mac has got all these files and stuff in my home directory. So let's see how to connect to my host system. To connect to my host system, I'm going to have to connect to the IP address of the host system, whatever my virtual machine thinks the IP address of the host system is, which is normally going to be the first IP address in the network. So for example, ping 10.0.2.1. Okay, that's not it. Maybe it's 2. Okay, yeah. So my virtual machine is looking at my host system, which is the router in this case, as having an IP address of 2. So let's see if I can SSH into my host system. Elliot at 10.0.2.2. Okay, it says connection refused, probably because I don't have it turned on inside my networking settings as far as sharing. So let's turn on screen sharing, file sharing. Let's see. Other users can access photos on those computers. I think this, no, we want remote. We want remote login. So this is how we'll be able to SSH. So it says we can use this IP address, but I don't think so, because my host, my virtual machine doesn't know what IP address this is. But let's just see. Let's try it. What's the IP? 192.168.0.103. Let's see. SSH Elliot at 192.168.0.103. Ah, yeah, it does. It does understand what that is. Oh, okay, cool. So we can either use, and as you see, I'm logged into my MacBook Pro, because now you see down here it says Elliot's MacBook Pro. So you know that I'm logged in, and I'm in users Elliot. Okay, so let's get out of that. And also, if I type host name, this will further prove that I'm actually on that system. So let's get out of that, and let's come back and try to log into 10.0.2.2. And that works as well. I think. That works as well. Okay, cool. All right, so as I showed you, you can log in to your host system from the virtual machine. Now, can you do it the other way around? NMCLI. Remember, this computer's IP address is 10.0.2.15. So from my Macintosh computer, let's SSH as root at 10.0.2. So at this point, we're not even, we shouldn't even get denied or anything. It just should not be able to find the connection. And it's hanging because, you know, it doesn't know anything about that IP address. So like I said, you have to use port forwarding when you're going back the other way. So since I know this is not going to work, I'm going to let that hang out for a little bit, but I'm going to come back over here and set up port forwarding. So I'm going to come back to network, come down to port forwarding, and we're going to call this rule SSH. And I'm going to say, I don't need to put in my host IP, but the host port that I need to be forwarding to, we're going to make up a port. We're going to call this 2215 because 22 is the default port number for SSH, and 15 is the IP address of my computer, of the virtual machine. So this is just a convention that I'm using, that I'm saying, hey, you know, I want to use the first 2 digits of the default SSH port 22, and I'm going to use the last digits of the IP address to give me a unique port that I can SSH into. So that is the host port, and on the guest port, it's going to map to 22 because SSH is running over port 22 on the guest. And that's about, guest IP, sorry. I actually need to put 22 over here. And then for the guest IP address, I don't think we need to put anything over here. If anything, we could just put localhost or 127.0.0.1. But let's see, because I kind of forget sometimes. So I'm just going to save that. And as you can see, we have no guest IP, but we have a guest port and we have a host port. So host port is what we're going to use to actually SSH in. So let's try it. So we're going to SSH in, and we're going to say over port 2215. And we're going to change this to localhost. So now it's asking us for a password, and it logs us into the server. So as you can see, the bottom line is when you want to set up your virtual machine to be able to SSH into it from your host machine, you're going to need to set up port forwarding right here. And we just gave it a name, called it SSH. We didn't need a host IP. We didn't need a guest IP because we're basically SSHing into localhost from our host computer. And we SSH'd over port 2215, and it mapped to port 22. Yeah. So, and if you want to set up other virtual machines that you want to, there are unsafe changes. Okay. If you want to set up other virtual machines and you want to SSH into them, you're just going to need to give them different port numbers to SSH into. They need to be unique. The port numbers need to be unique. You'll always be SSHing into localhost, but the port numbers will be unique. So, yep, that's it. Hope you got something from this, and we'll talk to you later. Elliot, my web guy. Peace out.